Kentucky often looks like a quiet piece of America. Green hills, long rural roads, and small towns that seem like they have barely changed in decades. But once you really go deeper, you realize this state is actually split into two very different stories. There is one side of Kentucky that feels alive and well kept, where small downtowns still function, local economies have clear foundations, and regional identity is truly lived, not just remembered. But there is another side that feels far quieter. Small towns that once grew because of mines, rivers, or old trade routes, then slowly lost their economic reason to exist. Hickman feels like a small American town slowly left behind by time. This little town, at the far western edge of Kentucky, sits on high bluffs overlooking the Mississippi River, giving it a riverfront view that is actually beautiful and an old America atmosphere that is hard to find today. In the past, Hickman lived from river trade and regional transportation. But when America's economy shifted toward interstate highways and modern logistics centers, the town began losing its role. Today, many parts of downtown feel quiet, with far less business activity than in the past. Hickman's median household income is now estimated at only around $34,000, far below the American national average. About 31% of families live in poverty, while the town's population has continued to decline in recent years. In the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Kentucky, Cumberland is still filled with old coal worker houses clinging to narrow hillsides, long railroad lines that once carried coal, and old brick buildings along Main Street, many of which now look empty or only partly active. Cumberland was once one of the important coal towns in Harlan County. Even today, its mining identity still feels strong. But after the Appalachian coal industry slowly collapsed from the late 20th century onward, Cumberland's economy fell with it. Its latest median household income is only around $40,000, while the poverty rate is 25%. What makes Cumberland feel heavy is not just the data, but the atmosphere. Young people keep moving out of Kentucky in search of more stable work. Beattyville has a very different atmosphere from the classic image of Kentucky horse country. This small town in the Appalachian Hills feels far more remote, surrounded by dense forest, winding roads, and narrow valleys that make it look isolated from modern American growth. Its downtown is small, quiet, and filled with simple old buildings, some of which are starting to show their age. Many local businesses depend on a small community-scale economy, while major job opportunities are almost non-existent. Beattyville's latest median household income is estimated at only around $22,000, with a poverty rate near 42%. That is one of the hardest numbers for a small town in Kentucky. As a permanent place to live, Beattyville feels like a town constantly fighting against generations of Appalachian economic isolation. Clinton is not the kind of town that immediately looks destroyed. That is exactly what makes it interesting. At first glance, its small downtown still looks like an old rural Kentucky postcard. An old courthouse, simple local shops, and a main street that is almost empty in the afternoon. But the longer you look at it, the more you feel that Clinton lives within a very small and slow economy. The town now has only around 1,100 residents, with a median age above 50, a clear sign that many young people leave and do not come back. Homes here are very cheap, even by Kentucky standards, with some costing less than a new pickup truck in America. But those low property prices actually reflect weak demand and limited economic opportunities in the town. Prestonsburg actually tries to look more alive than many other coal towns in Appalachian Kentucky. Compared with other small Appalachian towns, Prestonsburg clearly still has a regional economic pulse. But once you move just a little outside the town center, the reality of eastern Kentucky becomes obvious. Narrow hills are filled with old houses clinging to the slopes. Many areas look left behind, and the collapse of the coal industry still shadows almost the entire region. Floyd County itself has lost thousands of mining jobs over the past several decades, and many young families have moved out of state in search of more stable work. For many Americans, the name Hazard already sounds like a fictional town. Ironically, this Appalachian city in eastern Kentucky really does have an atmosphere that sometimes feels like a movie set about American coal country. A small main road cuts through a narrow valley. Steep green hills surround the town on every side, and almost all of its local identity is still tied to coal history. Hazard once grew as a trade and administrative center for the mining region of Perry County. The old TV series, The Dukes of Hazzard, often makes outsiders think the town is famous, even though there is no direct connection. But after the coal industry weakened, the local economy was hit hard. Many downtown shops look old. Some motels and commercial buildings seem stuck in the 1990s, and the area's population continues to shrink slowly. Cloverport is the kind of small river town that immediately reminds you how many American towns once lived from the river, then slowly lost their reason to grow. This small town along the Ohio River was once fairly busy as a regional trading point. Today, the atmosphere is much quieter. Downtown Cloverport is filled with old brick buildings and early 20th century homes that give it a classic Midwestern river town feel. But many parts of town look like they have not changed much in decades. What makes Cloverport different from Appalachian coal towns is its slow atmosphere. It does not feel like a collapsed industrial town, but more like an old river town slowly shrinking because the modern economy moved somewhere else. Some downtown blocks even feel almost like a time capsule from 1970s America. Vanceburg feels like a town living between two worlds, not truly remote Appalachia, but also far from the fast-growing Kentucky around Lexington or Louisville. One of the most noticeable things here is the lack of new development. Many local businesses are still small family-owned shops, while the commercial area looks almost unchanged for years. The town's population has also continued to decline slowly, and its latest median household income is only around $30,000. Its poverty rate is close to 40%. The problem is that the beauty of the area has not been enough to bring major investment or job opportunities into the town. Vanceburg feels peaceful, but also like a small community that keeps shrinking little by little every year. While many of Kentucky's worst towns are tied to former coal mining, Guthrie feels more like a small border town slowly disappearing from America's attention. It sits right on the Kentucky-Tennessee line, and most of its activity is centered around only a few small blocks near the railroad tracks and the old main road that was once much busier before the interstate took over regional traffic. The most striking thing about Guthrie is how small it feels. Its population is now under 1,400 people, making the town feel extremely quiet outside of school hours or local church activity. Many old homes stand close to empty lots and small buildings that look like they have barely changed since the mid-20th century. Munfordville actually has a much more strategic location than many other towns on this list. This small town sits right near Interstate 65, the main route connecting Louisville and Nashville. In theory, A position like that should help the local economy grow. But strangely, Munfordville still feels like a small transit town that never truly took off. Many people who live here work in other towns, or visitors only stop briefly before continuing back to the interstate. Munfordville's latest median household income is around $32,000, while its poverty rate is close to 33%. Compared with the Appalachian towns on this list, Munfordville does not feel deeply collapsed. But it also does not have a strong economic identity that has allowed it to grow beyond being a small stopover town in central Kentucky. But interestingly, Kentucky's story does not end there, because once you shift just a little, the picture starts to change. You begin to see small towns that still have active downtowns, more stable local economies, or even strong identities they have successfully turned into strengths. Whether through culture, education, tourism, or specific industries that still operate today. Greenville is one of those Kentucky small towns with a quietly doing fine vibe. Not flashy, not viral, but stable in a relatively healthy way compared with many small towns in western Kentucky. Greenville also benefits from being the county seat of Muhlenberg County, so it still has an administrative role and public services that keep the economy moving. Compared with many other small towns in Kentucky, that matters a lot, because it means the town is not fully dependent on one collapsed industry. Interestingly, Greenville has a local reputation as a calm but livable town, not wealthy, but fairly stable. It has a unique mix of rural Kentucky lifestyle, an active local community, and a downtown that still feels alive, even if it is small. Harrodsburg has an atmosphere that feels different the moment you enter. This is not just another Kentucky small town, but almost a living museum of early American history. Founded in 1774, Harrodsburg is known as the oldest permanent settlement in Kentucky, and that legacy can still be felt in almost every corner of town. Downtown Harrodsburg itself feels neat and well kept, with a classic courthouse, local shops that are still active, and an atmosphere that feels more curated than many other small towns that seem stagnant. The town also benefits from being not too far from Lexington, giving it better economic access than many rural towns in far western or eastern Kentucky. But Harrodsburg's greatest strength is not its numbers, it is its identity. The town has successfully marketed its history, not in an exaggerated way, but consistently enough to attract heritage tourism, local events, and community pride. Paducah is one of Kentucky's most surprising examples. From the outside, it may look like an ordinary river city where the Ohio and Tennessee rivers meet, but once you enter its downtown, the atmosphere feels far more alive than many other small towns in the state. Downtown Paducah has an active riverfront, large murals on old building walls, and an arts district that is truly used, not just displayed for tourism. The city is also known as a UNESCO Creative City of crafts and folk art, especially because of the National Quilt Museum, which gives Paducah a strong and consistent cultural identity. Economically, Paducah is more stable for a small Kentucky city. Its latest median household income is around $50,000, with a poverty rate of about 22%, lower than many western and eastern Kentucky towns in the worst category. Maysville has one of the strongest first impressions among Kentucky's small towns, because it greets you with the wide Ohio River and rows of old stone buildings rising and falling with the hills. This is not a flat, orderly town. Maysville feels layered, like a 19th century river city still surviving in the modern era. Its downtown is one of the most interesting in northeastern Kentucky. Wall Street, its main street, is filled with historic Federal and Victorian buildings, still used for local businesses, small cafes, and law offices. Some blocks even feel like a time capsule from the era when rivers were America's interstate highways. What makes Maysville stand out is its balance. It has not grown like a suburb near Lexington, but it also has not fallen into the extreme stagnation seen in many Appalachian towns. Midway is small, even by Kentucky small-town standards, but that is exactly its charm. Once you enter downtown, you immediately get a neat, compact feeling, almost like a movie set. A railroad line still cuts through the center of town, with old brick buildings now used as cafes, small boutiques, and local restaurants that feel curated but still alive. The name Midway is not accidental. The town grew as the midpoint on the Lexington-Frankfort rail line. Even today, that rail line remains the most iconic part of the town's identity. Trains can pass right through downtown, something that has become an attraction rather than a problem. What puts Midway in the best small-town category is not just the numbers, but its sense of place. It is close to Lexington, surrounded by green and well-kept bluegrass horse country, and has a walkable downtown that feels active without feeling artificial. Grange has one of the weird but iconic downtown scenes in Kentucky. Freight trains actually pass directly along Main Street, not on the edge of town, but right through the middle of its business district. You can sit in a small cafe, and just a few meters in front of you, a long train slowly passes between the old buildings. And this happens fairly often, not just as an occasional attraction. The downtown itself feels very well kept. Classic brick buildings, local shops, and a walkable street give LaGrange a small-town vibe that feels neat but still alive. Economically, LaGrange is one of Kentucky's more prosperous small towns because it sits in Oldham County, which consistently ranks among the higher income areas in the state. The area's median income is far above Kentucky's average, with a relatively low poverty rate compared with the Appalachian towns or river towns from the earlier list. Danville has a different kind of best small-town energy. Not flashy, not viral, but stable, tidy, and like a town that knows how to stay relevant without losing its historic character. What makes Danville stand out is its role as a college and cultural town. The presence of Center College gives it a steady, youthful energy, so the town does not feel old and empty like many other small towns. Campus events, student activity, and the local community keep the town's rhythm alive throughout the year. Economically, Danville is in a fairly healthy position for a Kentucky small town. Its latest median household income is around $52,000, with a poverty rate of about 17%, better than many rural areas in the state. Paris is one of those Kentucky small towns that wins visually without even trying. As you get close to town, the landscape shifts into classic bluegrass region scenery. Wide green fields, long white wooden fences, and horse farms that look like living paintings. This is not just a small town, it is part of the heart of Kentucky's horse industry. Downtown Paris is small but elegant. Old brick buildings, a classic courthouse, and neat local shops give it a slightly rural aristocratic feel, almost like Kentucky's version of a small European town adapted to the American South. Economically, Paris sits in the upper middle range for a Kentucky small town. It is not spectacular, but it is fairly stable because of its closeness to Lexington and the still active horse industry. What makes Paris stand out is the mix of a wealthy countryside feel and simple small-town life. Berea has a vibe that immediately feels different from many other Kentucky small towns. Younger, more creative, and like an Appalachian town that successfully reinvented itself. Once you enter the town, you quickly see a unique combination of craft culture, college life, and a relaxed but lively mountain town atmosphere. Berea's most iconic identity is its role as a center of Appalachian folk art. Handcrafts, woodworking, pottery, and small studios are spread throughout the town, not just as tourist attractions, but as a real part of the local economy. Berea College is also an important backbone. The school is known for its tuition-free policy for many students, which keeps a steady flow of young people in town throughout the year. Bardstown is often called the Bourbon capital of the world, and that is not just a tourism slogan. The town truly lives from the bourbon industry. As soon as you enter the area, you can feel the unique combination of a well-kept historic downtown and distillery activity spread around the city. Downtown Bardstown feels like a carefully preserved postcard. Classic brick buildings, an old church dominating its small skyline, and a main street filled with local restaurants, bourbon bars, and small shops that are still active. At night, the atmosphere is not empty. It actually feels alive with tourists coming for the Bourbon Trail. What makes Bardstown truly stand out is the stability of its identity. Many other small towns in Kentucky have lost their economic reason, but Bardstown has one major industry that supports everything: